Recording app is giving me some trouble, so hopefully this will work. In the meantime, I have to bring up the PPT, which crashed because I had to reboot the computer. But anyway, this is a nice report on how to empower people to deal with climate change, especially climate anxiety, because I've harped about this before. What cast to no get away from me. So Microsoft is always sending me some message to do things at the wrong time. Why am I okay here? Sorry, this is not a good morning in terms of this recording. So this is from the Australian Psychological Society on the climate change empowerment and a handbook that gives a bunch of steps to follow. So psychological strategies to tackle climate change. So it's about actually climate change and not just climate anxiety, but you cannot tackle climate change. You cannot get ready and get into action to change, deal with climate change unless you have gone past the anxiety part of it. So nice little schematic here, or artistic rendition of a brain that has roots in it, and then a seedling is sprouting at the top. So I'll read the summary plots first, and then we'll come back to a few more details from each of the chapters. The program is called Activate, 8 strategies from psychology to tackle climate change. So what is Activate? Acknowledge feelings, create social norms, talk about climate change, inspire, value it, act, time is now, and engage. So obviously a bit made up, but nice to remember. Activate, right? Say something. How to activate people and governments and politicians and firms to tackle climate change. So 8 strategies from psychology to tackle climate change. As we said, climate change is the biggest health threat in the 21st century. Already we are seeing climate disruptions in many places on the globe, with far worse forecast of things to come. So these 8 simple but important insights from psychological science, summarized with the acronym Activate, help people come to terms and cope with the profound implications of climate change. We hope they will activate the public into more effectively engaging with the challenge of climate change and participate in speedy societal change to restore a safe climate. Okay, climate is never really safe. There are always hazards. It's a question of whether we are increasing the risks by our increased greenhouse gases and other activities, and whether we are increasing our vulnerability and exposure by moving into dangerous regions like mountain slopes and coasts and so on and so forth. So acknowledge feelings about climate change to yourself and others, and learn ways of managing feelings so you can face and not avoid the reality of climate change or deny. Create social norms about protecting the environment so that people see that everyone is doing it and it's normal to be green, like smoking. Now smoking is mostly a social stigma, and that worked. Talk about climate change and break the collective silence so that more and more people see it as a risk that requires action. Inspire positive visions of low energy, sustainable, zero carbon world so that people know what we are working towards and can identify steps to get there, so that you are not just being told to not do this, not do that, don't fly, don't eat meat, don't buy new phones, don't recycle everything, reuse everything, don't buy new clothes, and so on and so forth. But what is it all for? If you do all these things, what do you get in the end? So value it, show people how their core values are often linked to other values that are about restoring a safe climate, and that caring about these issues actually reinforces their core values. So we'll look at the details of each of these in terms of intrinsic values and so on. act personally and collectively to contribute to climate change solutions, and feel engaged and less despairing. So that if you're feeling anxious and feel helpless, then just see that there are things you can do. It's not about how much impact one person can have, but it's about feeling part of the society that wants to do something, community, a student union, whatever. Time is now. Show people that climate change is here now and for sure, so they are uh, so that they see it is timely and relevant to them and impacts the things that they care deeply about. Identify something that you know you love and how it may be negatively affected by climate, and then maybe get motivation from there. Engage with nature to restore your spirits and connect with the very places that you are trying to protect. So there are articles showing that in the US people love nature, love to be in the parks, but they are not always willing to protect it from climate change, because climate change is another beast that doesn't make sense. We'll see later on why people tend to deny climate change or think it's not a big deal, and or not act urgently, and so on and so forth. So another way to look at it: activate 8 psychological strategies to tackle climate change. Acknowledge feelings, create social norms, talk about it, inspire positive visions, value it, the planet, the climate, the location, the specific rivers, mountains, forests, whatever. Act, time is now, and engage with nature. So what's the executive summary? In this document, we put forward 8 simple but important best practice insights from psychological science to help people come to terms with and cope with come to terms and cope with the profound implications of climate change, so that they can stay engaged with the problem, see where their own behavior plays a part, and participate in speedy societal change to restore a safe climate. So again, just remember, this safe climate is a kind of not well defined term here, but you know what it means. So that overall risk is reduced, exposure, vulnerability, hazards, and responses are better. The insights are drawn from extensive research across a range of areas that psychologists work in. So these are the papers. These 8 insights make the acronym ACTIVATE, and we hope they will activate the public into more effectively engaging with the challenge of climate change. Acknowledge feelings about climate change to yourself and others, and learn ways of managing feelings so you can face and not avoid the reality of climate change. Create social norms about protecting the environment so that people see that everyone is doing it and it's normal to be green. Talk about climate change and break the collective silence so that more and more people see it as a risk that requires action, and that there is a positive outcome at the end. Inspire positive visions of a low energy, sustainable, zero carbon world so that people know what we are working towards and can identify steps to get there. I'm just repeating some of these because they are worth repeating. Value it, show people how their core values, like intrinsic values, are often linked to other values that are about restoring a safe climate, and that caring about these issues actually reinforces their core values. So let's say you like to fly and everybody is telling you flying is bad, but you love flying so much that you tend to reduce your carbon footprint from elsewhere. So your values of cultural exploration or visiting places by flying can still be done by doing other things, so that your intrinsic interests and values are not violated. Act personally and collectively to contribute to climate change solutions, and feel engaged and less despairing. Time is now. Show people that climate change is here now and for sure, so they see it as timely and relevant to them as well, and impacts the things that they care deeply about. So intrinsic values and things you care about, and you stand up for things you care about. So that's what intrinsic value is all about. Extrinsic values are when you are focused on image, power, wealth, and so on. Engage with nature to restore your spirits and connect with the very places that you are trying to protect. So if you are okay with it, you can quit listening now, because the rest is all details on each of these items, which are worth listening to, even though I am being very brief. It's a nice long report. I'm just cutting and reporting few things as the most salient points from this report. but that's a subjective choice. So you want to go and read the full report if you are interested in the details. 97% of climate scientists agree that humans are causing global warming. Does that convince you that it's a very important thing and that it's the right thing and the science is right? Well, there are lots of human biases that play on top of what science says. We'll see that in the next podcast. With 97% of climate scientists agreeing that climate change is caused by human behavior, and 87% of Australians surveyed across the country also accepting that climate change is real, happening, and driven in some way by human behavior, it's clearly time to move to action. So this is meant for Australians, but it's good for all of us. This handbook is for the huge majority of people who are concerned about the threat of climate change, accept that it's a serious problem for the planet right now, and know that they want to engage themselves and others with the problem and solutions, even if they are not sure how. So there is a risk and you don't know exactly what it means to you directly, but you are worried enough and your intrinsic values say you must act. Should I read one more? Yeah, let's read one more because I have to run to class soon. Nature of the threat. Climate change is arguably the biggest global health threat of the 20th century, as we said. It's good that they are saying it's a health threat. There are also lots of claims about how it affects GDP, how it affects people's income, equality, gender issues, exacerbates everything, makes it more difficult to meet the sustainable development goals and so on and so forth. But if you remember, in the 1970s, when pollution was a big talk, then came climate change and global warming, and we stuck with global warming as the main issue. Pollution is still the biggest killer. Natural hazards kill less than 1%, but pollution of the total death. But pollution not only kills directly, but exacerbates pretty much everything. Okay, so maybe we missed the bus a little by not focusing on health and pollution, but nonetheless, without concerted efforts, the growth in global emissions will continue, and they are unfortunately continuing. The safe limit for temperature increase is recognized as 1.5 degrees C, but if we continue on a business as usual basis, global temperature will rise between 3.7 and 4.8 degrees centigrade. Let's not worry about where the 1.5 degrees C came from, but if you are interested in that, I have podcasts saying what the origin of those 2 degrees C and 1.5 degrees C numbers are. Those are the warmings that we want to limit to by 2100 with some 67% probability. This level of temperature increase would be catastrophic. It would entail a world of unprecedented heat waves, severe drought, bushfires, flooding, inundation of many cities, and other land and major storms as well, which are what bring inundation of cities and so on. These events have serious impacts on all human systems and ecosystems, creating many climate refugees, increased mortality, and species extinctions. Climate change increases the severity of or frequency of health problems that are already affected by climate or weather factors such as diarrheal diseases, mosquito-borne diseases, foodborne diseases, waterborne diseases, vector mosquito, as well as creating unprecedented or unanticipated physical and mental health problems or health threats in places where they have not previously occurred. So with the warming, tropics expand, mosquitoes go up the mountain and to higher latitudes, tropical diseases arrive in higher latitudes, and crops begin to fail, so you will have nutrition issues, water security issues, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's leave this here and come back and continue. It should take a couple of more podcasts, but definitely worth going through as briefly as possible without losing interest, and yet making all the most salient points that the report makes and that are important for empowering people to deal with climate change and to work on solving the problem itself. Okay, so I'll come back and see you in the next podcast.